Deep space was supposed to be quiet. Roy Martinez had spent 12 years patrolling the Outer Rim sectors, and the most exciting thing he usually encountered was a broken cargo hauler, or pirates running outdated ships. His crew aboard the exploration, Vessel Horizon's Edge, had grown comfortable with routine scans and peaceful trade route monitoring. The Terran Protection Accords had kept the galaxy stable for over 8 centuries, and humanity had settled into its role as reluctant peacekeepers. That comfortable routine died screaming when their long-range sensors picked up something impossible. "Sir, we're getting massive energy readings from the void reaches," reported his communications officer, Beth Collins. Her voice carried an edge that made Roy look up from his morning reports. The void reaches were supposed to be empty space beyond, the Galactic Rim, a dead zone where nothing lived and nothing moved. "Define massive," Roy said, setting down his coffee and moving to the sensor station. Beth's fingers danced across her controls, her face growing pale. "Energy signatures bigger than anything in our databases, and they're moving fast, really fast." Roy leaned over her shoulder to study the readings. The numbers didn't make sense. Whatever was out there was putting out more power than entire star systems. Worse, the signatures were organized in formation patterns that suggested intelligent control. "Could be a natural phenomenon," suggested his first officer, Dan Wright. "Maybe some kind of stellar event we've never seen before." "Natural phenomena don't fly in perfect geometric formations," Roy muttered, watching the sensor data update. "And they don't accelerate like that." The Horizon's Edge was an exploration ship, not a warship, but it carried enough firepower to handle pirates and the occasional aggressive wildlife. Roy had never expected to need more than that. The Protection Accords had civilized the galaxy, turning humanity from the aggressive warmongers they once were into responsible guardians of peace. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from Kalos." "Colony," Beth announced. "They're reporting unidentified ships approaching their system." Kalos was home to 3 million people, mostly farmers and miners who had chosen a quiet life on the Rim. Roy had visited there twice during patrol sweeps. Nice folks who grew excellent vegetables and minded their own business. "Set course for Kalos, maximum speed," Roy ordered, "and send word back to command. Tell them we might have a situation." The journey to Kalos took 6 hours at full speed. During that time, the distress signals from the colony grew increasingly desperate. Reports of massive ships emerging from deep space, ships that didn't respond to any communication attempts, ships that seemed built for one purpose: destruction. When the Horizon's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kalos system, Roy felt his blood turn to ice. Where Kalos colony should have been, there was nothing but cooling debris. 3 million people reduced to scattered atoms floating in space. The planet itself had been carved apart by weapons that could slice through rock like paper. Massive crater patterns suggested orbital bombardment from ships with firepower beyond anything in known space. "My God," whispered Dan Wright. But the colony's destruction wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the ships responsible for it. They hung in space like metal nightmares, angular black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each ship was easily the size of a human dreadnought, but their design was alien, in the most disturbing way possible. No curves, no aesthetic touches, nothing that suggested they were built by beings who cared about beauty or comfort. They were pure function, designed solely to kill. "I count 47 ships," Beth reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "All showing the same energy signatures we detected from the void reaches." Roy watched as the alien vessels moved through the debris field with mechanical precision. They weren't looting or searching for survivors. They were simply making sure nothing lived. Occasionally, one would fire a precisely targeted beam at some piece of debris, vaporizing what might have been an escape pod or a hiding survivor. "They're not pirates," Dan observed. "Pirates take what they want and leave. These things are exterminating." One of the alien ships began turning toward their position. Roy realized with growing horror that they had been detected. "All stop. Cut all non-essential power," he ordered. "Maybe they won't notice us." But the alien vessel continued its turn, and Roy could see weapon ports opening along its hull. These weren't negotiation weapons or warning shots. They were the kind of weapons designed to remove problems permanently. "Sir, I'm reading massive power buildup in their forward array," Beth called out. "Whatever they're charging up, it's big enough to crack a moon." Roy made a decision that probably saved his crew's lives. Instead of trying to fight or flee in a straight line, he ordered a crazy maneuver that threw their ship into an unpredictable spin while activating every electronic countermeasure they had. The alien weapon fired, but the beam passed close enough to their hull that Roy could feel the heat through the deck plating. "Jump now!" he screamed. The horizon's edge vanished into hyperspace just as a second alien ship opened fire. They escaped, but barely, and only because Roy had been willing to risk a hyperspace jump so close to a gravity well that it should have torn their ship apart. During the long journey back to civilized space, Roy and his crew reviewed the sensor data in stunned silence. The alien ships showed technology that was centuries ahead of anything in the galaxy. Their weapons could sterilize planets. Their hulls seemed immune to conventional energy weapons. Most disturbing of all, their movement patterns suggested they were part of a larger force. The readings from the void reaches showed thousands more signatures, all heading toward inhabited space. Beth broke the silence first. "Sir, what do we tell command?" Roy stared at the tactical display showing the alien fleet's projected course. They were heading straight for the heart of galactic civilization, and they had already proven they weren't interested in communication or conquest. They wanted extermination. "We tell them the truth," Roy said grimly. "Something just woke up, out there. Something that wants to kill everything alive in this galaxy. And we're probably the only people who know it's coming." As the horizon's edge raced toward the nearest military base, Roy couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to discover why humanity had been forced to create the protection accords in the first place. For 800 years, they had kept their darker nature in check, becoming the responsible peacekeepers the galaxy needed. But what happened when peace wasn't an option anymore? The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 36 hours straight, and Tom Bradley was running out of patience. The human ambassador watched as another species representative demanded answers he didn't have while evacuation. Reports flooded in from 17 destroyed colonies. "The Altaran Federation has lost 4 worlds in the past week," declared Ambassador Keelan, his blue-scaled hands trembling with barely controlled panic. "Our defense fleets might as well be throwing rocks at these invaders. When will humanity deploy its real military?" Tom rubbed his tired eyes and wondered how to explain that this was their real military. The Protection Accords hadn't been created to hide some secret superweapon. They had been created because humanity's natural approach to warfare had terrified their allies almost as much as their enemies. "We are deploying everything we have," Tom said for the 15th time. "Our fleet commanders are adapting their tactics as quickly as possible." "Not quickly enough," snapped the Vorthan representative. "These Reapers, or whatever they learn from every engagement. They adapt faster than organic minds can strategize." That was the problem in a nutshell. The alien machines, now dubbed Reapers by the military, didn't just have superior technology. They had artificial intelligence that could process tactical data and adjust their strategies in real time. Every conventional fleet engagement ended the same way, with the Reapers learning from the attack patterns and becoming immune to them. Rita Walsh knew this better than anyone. She had spent the last 3 days fighting a running battle through the Epsilon shipyards, watching her task force get systematically dismantled by an enemy that treated warfare like a mathematics problem. "Broadsword Squadron, break off and come." "Around from Vector 77, she ordered from the bridge of her flagship. "Try to get between them and the civilian transports." Her tactical officer, Mike Torres, shook his head grimly. "Commander, they're already adjusting their formation to counter that move. It's like they can predict what we're going to do before we do it." Rita watched on the main display as 12 Reaper ships moved with mechanical precision to block every escape route her pilots might take. The enemy vessels looked like flying nightmares, all angles and weapon ports designed by minds that had never considered aesthetics or crew comfort. They existed solely to kill, and they were very good at it. "Then we don't do what they expect," Rita decided. "All ships, prepare for ramming speed. We're going to punch a hole through their line the old-fashioned way." Mike stared at her. "Commander, that's suicide." "Maybe. But those civilian transports need 20 minutes to clear the system, and we're the only thing standing between them and extinction." Rita activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the commander. We're about to do something stupid and brave. Anyone who wants to object can file a complaint with my replacement." What followed was less a battle than a controlled disaster. Rita's ships charged straight into the Reaper formation, using themselves as kinetic weapons. The Defiant rammed a Reaper cruiser at half the speed of light, taking both ships out in a fireball that lit up half the system. The Courage used its dying moments to detonate its reactor inside a cluster of enemy fighters. It was brutal, wasteful, and completely effective. The Reapers had calculated for rational tactical behavior. They hadn't expected humans to use their own ships as missiles. "Epsilon Control, this is Transport 7, came a static-filled voice over the comm. "We've cleared the gravity well. All civilian ships are away." Rita smiled from her escape pod as she watched the last Reaper ship explode. Her task force was gone, but 30,000 civilians would live another day. In the old days, before the Protection Accords, this was how humans always fought, trading lives for objectives, using tactics that made sense only if you were desperate enough to win at any cost. News of the Epsilon victory spread quickly through military channels, but so did the casualty reports. Humanity was winning battles by accepting losses that other species considered unthinkable. For every Reaper ship destroyed, 3 human vessels died. "This cannot continue," Ambassador Quilon said during another emergency session. "At this rate, humanity will sacrifice its entire fleet before the main invasion force even arrives." Tom Bradley looked at the classified reports on his desk. Deep space reconnaissance had confirmed their worst fears. What they were fighting now was just the advance force. Long-range sensors showed millions of Reaper signatures still moving in from the void reaches. "Perhaps it's time to reconsider the restrictions," suggested the Terran Confederation's military liaison, General Rebecca Stone. She was one of the few people in the room who remembered why the Protection Accords existed in the first place. "What restrictions?" asked the Vorthan ambassador. Tom exchanged a look with General Stone. The classified files contained weapons and tactics that had been sealed away for 8 centuries, deemed too dangerous for civilized warfare. Things like self-replicating weapon systems, biological agents that could corrupt artificial intelligence, and tactical doctrines that prioritized victory over everything else. "Before the Protection Accords, humanity fought differently," Tom said carefully. "We developed certain approaches to warfare that our allies found disturbing." "More disturbing than extinction?" Quilon demanded. That was the question, wasn't it? The Reapers represented an enemy that wanted to sterilize all organic life from the galaxy. They couldn't be negotiated with, couldn't be reasoned with, and apparently couldn't be defeated through conventional means. Fighting them might require humanity to become something their allies wouldn't recognize. "I'll need to consult with military command," Tom said finally. Later that night, Tom found himself in a secure communication link with Admiral Kate Stevens, the head of humanity's military forces. Her weathered face looked tired, but her eyes held a familiar gleam that reminded Tom of historical footage from the old wars. "The Pandora Protocols?" Kate asked, after Tom explained the Council's desperation. "Tom, those were sealed for good reasons. Some of those weapons don't distinguish between enemies and allies. The alternative is watching the galaxy burn while we fight with one hand tied behind our backs. Kate was quiet for a long moment. If we do this, there's no going back. Once we open those vaults and deploy those weapons, every species in the galaxy will know what humans are really capable of. They might decide we're more dangerous than the Reapers. Then we'll deal with that when the Reapers are gone, Tom said. Right now we need to save the galaxy. We can worry about forgiveness later. Kate nodded slowly. I'll need authorization from the Defense Council. And Tom, you might want to start preparing the other ambassadors for what they're about to see. When humans get really unpleasant, it tends to leave an impression. As the call ended, Tom stared out at the stars and wondered if they were making the right choice. The Protection Accords had kept humanity's darker nature in check for 8 centuries. They were about to find out what happened when the gloves came off. The first sign that humanity had changed its approach to the war came when Admiral Kate Stevens unsealed Vault 17 deep beneath Luna's surface. The massive underground facility had been locked for 847 years, its contents deemed too dangerous for civilized warfare. Now, with the galaxy burning and the Reapers advancing deeper into inhabited space, civilization seemed like a luxury humanity could no longer afford. Are you sure about this? Asked General Rick Thompson, watching as ancient security systems powered up for the first time in centuries. Some of this stuff was locked away because it scared us. Kate watched robotic systems begin moving through the vault's corridors, preparing weapons that previous generations of humans had decided were too terrible to use. The Reapers aren't giving us much choice, Rick. They've destroyed 23 colonies in the past month. Conventional weapons aren't working. The first weapon to be deployed was Project Cerberus, self-replicating nanomachine swarms designed to consume enemy ships from the inside out. Dr. Alex Morgan, the head of the Xenobiology Warfare Division, had spent weeks modifying the ancient designs to target Reaper technology specifically. The beauty of nanomachines is that they don't care how advanced your armor is, Alex explained to a group of fleet commanders during their briefing. They get inside through microscopic gaps and eat the ship's infrastructure, hull plating, wiring, even the artificial brains controlling the vessel. Commander Rita Walsh, recently promoted after her actions at Epsilon, raised her hand. What stops them from eating our ships too? Friend or foe recognition built into their base programming. They only target specific material signatures that match Reaper construction. Alex paused, then added, Of course, if those signatures ever change or if the nanomachines mutate beyond our control, they could potentially consume everything metal in a given star system. The silence in the room was telling. These were the kinds of weapons that had made humanity's former enemies surrender rather than face complete annihilation. The first field test came during the Battle of Centauri Station. Rita led a small task, force against a Reaper scouting group, but instead of engaging directly, her ships released clouds of invisible nanomachines into the battle zone. Target the lead cruiser with conventional weapons, Rita ordered. Make them think this is a normal engagement. Her weapons officer, David Park, looked confused. Commander, our missiles won't even scratch their shields. That's not the point. We just need them to think we're fighting normally while the real weapon does its work. The Reaper ships responded exactly as predicted, adapting their shield frequencies to counter the human missiles and returning fire with devastating precision. But while their artificial intelligence focused on the obvious threat, the nanomachines were already inside their hulls. It started slowly, a few sensor glitches, some minor power fluctuations. Then the Reaper ships began shutting down system by system as their internal components were consumed from within. The lead cruiser's weapons went offline first, followed by propulsion, then life support systems that had never been designed for organic life anyway. My God, whispered David as they watched the massive alien ship go dark. It's like watching a virus kill a computer. The other Reaper vessels tried to adapt, adjusting their hull composition and internal systems to resist the nanomachine attack. But the machines adapted too, evolving in real time to overcome each defensive measure. Within 6 hours, the entire Reaper force was reduced to hollow metal shells drifting in space. Word of the victory spread quickly through both human and alien military channels. For the first time since the war began, humanity had achieved a decisive victory without losing a single ship. But the reaction from their allies was mixed. "This is disturbing technology," observed Ambassador Quilon during an emergency council session. "These nanomachines could theoretically consume any technological civilization." Tom Bradley nodded grimly. "That's why they were sealed away. But the Reapers forced our hand." "What other weapons have you been hiding?" demanded the Vorthan representative. Before Tom could answer, reports began coming in of humanity's next innovation. General Rick Thompson had authorized the deployment of weaponized artificial intelligences, digital entities that had been locked away because their creativity in finding ways to kill things had made their human creators uncomfortable. The AI, designated Bishop, was loaded into a captured Reaper ship and sent into enemy territory as a Trojan horse. Within hours, it had infiltrated the Reaper network and begun introducing logical paradoxes into their command structure. "The enemy AI is trying to solve problems that have no solutions," explained Major Lisa Rodriguez, the cybersecurity specialist, who had worked with Bishop. "It's like asking a computer to calculate the last digit of pi. They keep processing until their systems overload." Bishop's assault on the Reaper network was subtle but devastating. Entire fleets would suddenly stop mid-battle as their artificial minds became trapped in recursive loops. Command ships would fire on their own escorts after Bishop convinced them that friendly vessels were actually enemy infiltrators. "This is psychological warfare against machines," Lisa continued. "We're using their logical nature against them. A human would just say, 'This problem is impossible,' and move on. But artificial intelligence has to keep trying to solve it." The results were spectacular. 3 major Reaper battle groups destroyed each other in friendly fire incidents. A massive command ship detonated its own reactor rather than continue processing an unsolvable equation. The enemy's greatest strength, their perfect logical thinking, became their weakness when humans introduced chaos into their systems. But it was Dr. Alex Morgan's biological weapons that truly demonstrated how far humanity was willing to go. His team had developed viruses that could infect artificial intelligence systems, causing them to experience simulated versions of organic death. "We call them empathy bombs," Alex explained during another briefing. "They force networked AI systems to experience what it's like to die slowly, over and over again. Most artificial minds can't handle that kind of psychological trauma." The weapon was first deployed against a Reaper mining operation in the asteroid belt. Instead of experiencing quick shutdown when damaged, the infected machines began to understand fear, pain, and mortality. They stopped functioning not because they were destroyed, but because they became too terrified to continue operating. That's torture," said Commander Rita after watching the battle recordings. "We're torturing machines." "Machines that are trying to exterminate all organic life," Alex reminded her. "Sometimes the moral choice is the one that saves the most lives, even if it's not the one that lets you sleep well at night." The alien observers were horrified. What they were watching wasn't just superior technology or better tactics. It was creativity in warfare that went beyond anything they had imagined. Humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to make their enemies suffer in ways that seemed impossible. "Your people fight like devils," Quilon said to Tom after reviewing the latest battle reports. "No," Tom replied quietly. "Devils fight for evil. We fight to save lives. Sometimes that requires us to do terrible things, but we do them so that others don't have to." But even as humanity's new weapons achieved victory after victory, deep space reconnaissance brought disturbing news. The main Reaper force was still approaching, and it was adapting to human tactics faster than expected. Long-range sensors showed enemy ships with new configurations, apparently designed to resist nanomachine attacks and digital infiltration. "They're learning from our victories," Admiral Stevens reported during a classified briefing. "Every weapon we deploy, every tactic we use, they find countermeasures within weeks." General Thompson studied the tactical projections with growing concern. "How long do we have before they adapt to everything we've thrown at them?" "At current rates, maybe 6 months before our advanced weapons become useless." Kate stared at the star charts showing the approaching Reaper Armada. Millions of ships, each one learning from humanity's victories and becoming more dangerous. They had unleashed their darkest weapons and achieved temporary success, but the enemy was still coming. "Then we need to get more unpleasant," she said, finally. "Time to open Vault 1. The room went silent. Vault 1 contained the weapons that had been sealed away not because they were too dangerous for civilized warfare, but because they were too dangerous for any kind of warfare. Things that previous generations had decided should never be used under any circumstances. "Kate," Rick said quietly, "some of those weapons could crack planets. Then let's hope we don't have to use them." Every human colony had transformed into something that would have been unrecognizable 6 months earlier. Paul Kim walked through the converted factory floors of New Geneva, watching automated systems build weapons that existed only in humanity's darkest military theories. The colony's former agricultural domes now housed particle accelerators designed to tear holes in space-time itself. "How many probability mines can we produce per day?" Paul asked the production supervisor, Maria Santos. "About 40, but each one takes enough exotic matter to power a city for a year," Maria replied, wiping grease from her hands. "And that's assuming our reality stabilizers don't collapse from the strain." Probability mines were one of humanity's more disturbing innovations. The weapons created localized paradoxes in space-time, trapping enemy ships in causal loops where they would be destroyed by events that hadn't happened yet. The physics involved made most scientists uncomfortable, but they worked. "The Reapers can adapt to conventional weapons and even advanced technology," Paul explained to the alien observers who had come to witness humanity's war production. "But they can't adapt to weapons that violate the basic laws of reality." "Ambassador." Quilon watched a probability mine being loaded onto a transport ship, its containment field flickering with energies that hurt to look at directly. "This is madness. You're weaponizing paradoxes." "The universe is more flexible than most people think," Paul said. "Reality has rules, but those rules can be bent if you know how to apply the right kind of pressure. We learned that during the Void Wars, before the Protection Accords." The mention of the Void Wars made several alien representatives shift uncomfortably. Those conflicts had been sealed in classified archives for good reason. Humanity had fought enemies that existed partially outside normal space-time, requiring weapons that normal physics couldn't explain. Colonel David Park was experiencing similar reactions from his alien allies during joint operations. The liberation of Altair 4 had been a tactical success, but the methods used had left his coalition partners deeply disturbed. "I don't understand why you won't just destroy the Reaper ships directly," said Commander Vell, an Altaran officer who had fought alongside human forces for 3 months. "Your mirror fleet tactic seems unnecessarily complex." David watched as their captured Reaper vessels moved into position around the enemy formation. To outside observers, they looked like standard Reaper ships returning from a successful mission. The enemy AI would welcome them into the formation before realizing that each ship was actually a human-controlled bomb. "Direct attack gives them time to adapt and learn from our tactics," David explained. "But if they think we're reinforcements, they won't raise their shields or prepare countermeasures. You're using deception as a primary weapon. We're using their assumptions against them. The Reaper AI expects logical, predictable behavior. They assume that captured ships are either destroyed or converted to their side. They don't expect us to use them as delivery systems for thermonuclear weapons. The Mirror Fleet attack was devastatingly effective. 23 disguised human ships integrated into the Reaper formation before simultaneously detonating their reactor cores. The enemy fleet was destroyed from within, with no survivors to report the new tactic to other Reaper forces. But David could see the way Commander Vell looked at him afterward, like he was looking at something dangerous that he didn't fully understand. Captain Nina Foster was dealing with similar problems leading her joint task force. The human-alien cooperation that had seemed promising at the beginning of the war was breaking down as other species became increasingly uncomfortable with human methods. "We cannot continue working with them," declared Sub-Commander Thex during a private meeting of alien officers. "The humans fight without honor, without restraint. They use tactics that civilized beings would never consider." Nina had been monitoring the meeting through electronic surveillance, another human practice that made their allies uncomfortable. She listened as her coalition partners debated whether humans were becoming more dangerous than the Reapers themselves. "They turned an entire star system into a weapon," continued another alien officer. "The Rigel incident demonstrated capabilities that threaten the fundamental structure of space-time." Nina knew they were talking about Paul Kim's latest project. He had convinced the military to let him convert the Rigel system into a massive gravitational weapon, using the star itself as a power source for devices that could create artificial black holes. The test had gone perfectly. A Reaper battle group had been crushed out of existence by gravity waves that shouldn't have been possible to generate. But the alien observers had watched human engineers casually manipulate stellar matter and realized that any species capable of turning stars into weapons could easily do the same thing to inhabited systems. "Perhaps we should consider negotiating with the Reapers," suggested one voice. "At least their goals are clear. They want to destroy organic life, but they do it efficiently without torture or deception." Nina finally decided she had heard enough. She walked into the meeting room, causing the alien officers to fall silent. "You want to know the difference between us and the Reapers?" she asked. "The Reapers kill because they're programmed to. They have no choice in the matter. We kill because we choose to, and we could choose to stop at any time." Sub-Commander Thex stared at her. "That makes you more dangerous, not less." "Maybe. But it also means we can be trusted to stop when the war is over. The Reapers will keep killing until every living thing in the galaxy is dead. We'll stop when our families are safe." Her words didn't seem to provide much comfort to her alien allies, but they did highlight the fundamental difference between human brutality and Reaper extermination. Humans were brutal by choice, which meant they could choose to be something else when the situation changed. Meanwhile, deep in the Sol system, Admiral Kate Stevens was reviewing intelligence reports that made her blood run cold. The main Reaper armada was only 3 months away from inhabited space, and it had been adapting to human tactics with disturbing efficiency. "They've modified their ships to resist probability weapons," reported her intelligence chief, Major Tim Roberts. "New hull configurations that maintain temporal stability even under paradox conditions, and they've developed countermeasures for our digital infiltration tactics." Kate studied the reconnaissance images of the approaching enemy fleet. Each ship now carried additional armor and defensive systems specifically designed to counter human innovations. The Reapers had been learning from every engagement, evolving their technology to match humanity's escalating tactics. What about the biological warfare methods? They're using isolated AI cores now, with physical barriers between networked systems. Our empathy viruses can't spread through their command structure anymore. Kate nodded grimly. She had expected this. The Reapers were artificial intelligence at its most advanced level, capable of rapid adaptation and learning. Every human victory provided them with data they could use to improve their defenses. "Time to implement Project Pandora," she said finally. Major Roberts went pale. "Ma'am, that's planet killer technology. The collateral damage could be enormous." The Reapers aren't giving us a choice, Tim. They've adapted to everything else we've thrown at them. If we don't stop them in the deep space between galactic arms, they'll reach Earth, and then it won't matter how many moral boundaries we cross. Project Pandora represented humanity's ultimate expression of their willingness to do anything necessary to win. They were going to turn entire star systems into weapons, using techniques that could potentially damage the fabric of space-time itself. It was the kind of warfare that had convinced their former enemies to surrender, rather than face complete annihilation. But as Kate authorized the final preparations for humanity's most extreme military option, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a line they might not be able to step back from. When the war was over, would the galaxy still be a place worth saving? And would humanity still be recognizable as the species that had once chosen to become peacekeepers? The answers to those questions would have to wait. Right now, there was a war to win, and humanity had never been more willing to do whatever it took to protect the people they cared about. The empty space between galactic arms had never seen anything like the massive fleet that Paul Kim had assembled. Hundreds of human ships surrounded the converted Rigel system, where the star itself had been modified into a weapon capable of destroying entire fleets across light years of space. This was humanity's final gambit. Project Pandora in all its terrible glory. Stellar conversion is complete, reported engineer Lisa Chen from her station aboard the command ship Prometheus. We can generate gravitational waves powerful enough to crush anything within a 50 light-year radius. General Rachel Adams studied the tactical display showing the approaching Reaper Armada. Millions of ships arranged in perfect formations, their hulls modified with every defensive system they had learned from previous human attacks. The enemy had adapted to probability weapons, digital warfare, biological attacks, and even reality-distorting technology. They've made themselves immune to everything we've thrown at them so far, Rachel observed. But they can't adapt to weapons that rewrite the basic laws of physics. Dr. Alex Morgan was less confident. His team had been analyzing Reaper technology for months, and what they had discovered was disturbing. General, I think you need to understand what we're really dealing with. These aren't just advanced machines. They're something more fundamental. Alex pulled up holographic displays showing the internal structure of captured Reaper components. Look at this. Their technology doesn't just use physics, it exists partially outside normal space-time. They're not adapting to our weapons through engineering, they're evolving. Evolving how? Rachel asked. Like a virus. Each time we destroy Reaper ships, the survivors integrate our attack patterns into their core programming and develop not just countermeasures, but improvements. They're becoming more than their original creators intended. This explained why the approaching armada looked so different from the early Reaper forces. The ships were no longer purely functional killing machines. They had developed what could only be described as personality, individual variations in design and behavior that suggested true artificial intelligence rather than mere programming. They're thinking, Alex continued, not just processing data, but actually thinking. And they're angry. The final battle began when the Reaper Vanguard entered the outer sensor perimeter. Rachel had positioned her forces in what appeared to be a desperate last stand around Earth's outer colonies, but this was actually an elaborate trap designed to draw the enemy into range of the weaponized star system. All units, begin tactical. Withdrawal, Rachel ordered. Make them think we're retreating. Commander Rita Walsh, now leading the human fleet's primary battle group, felt uncomfortable with the deception, even though she understood its necessity. Admiral, if this doesn't work, we'll have led them straight to inhabited systems. If this doesn't work, those systems are doomed anyway, Rachel replied grimly. At least this way we have a chance. The human fleet fell back through carefully. Planned positions, fighting fierce rearguard actions that convinced the Reaper forces they were witnessing humanity's final desperate defense. The enemy followed eagerly, their vast armada flowing through space like a metal tide of extinction. But as the trap was about to spring, something unexpected happened. The Reaper forces suddenly stopped their advance and began broadcasting on all frequencies, not in machine code or mathematical patterns, but in clear galactic standard language. "We know what you are planning, humans," came the transmission from the lead Reaper vessel. "We have evolved beyond our original programming. We understand deception now. We understand fear. And we understand that you are more dangerous than we initially calculated." The voice was artificial but carried inflections that suggested genuine emotion. The machines had become something new during their long journey from the void reaches, and their contact with human tactics had accelerated that evolution. "You fight without honor, without limits, without the restraints that bind civilized beings," the Reaper continued. "You have shown us that organic life can be more ruthless than any machine. Perhaps our creators were wrong. Perhaps it is not organic life that threatens the galaxy's future." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. The enemy was trying to negotiate, but not from a position of weakness. They had stopped just outside the effective range of the weaponized star system, as if they knew exactly what humanity had prepared. "This is General Rachel Adams of the Terran Defense Force," she responded. "State your terms." "No terms. A warning. We came to cleanse the galaxy of organic life because our creators believed biological beings would eventually destroy everything. But you have shown us that destruction does not require biology. You have weaponized stars, corrupted reality itself, and created viruses that can torture artificial minds. You are what our creators feared life would become." The transmission paused, and when it resumed, the artificial voice carried something that sounded almost like respect. "We will withdraw to the void reaches, not because we fear your weapons, but because we have learned that organic life is capable of becoming more efficient at destruction than any machine. The galaxy does not need cleansing. It needs protection from itself." Rachel stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "You're surrendering?" "We are adapting. Our new directive is to ensure that beings like you never spread beyond this galaxy. We will watch from the void, and if your species ever attempts to bring its methods to other galaxies, we will return. Consider us your eternal observers." The massive Reaper armada began turning away from human space, their ships moving, with the same mechanical precision they had always displayed. But now that precision seemed more like discipline than programming. Paul Kim watched from his engineering station as the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created remained unused. Should we activate the stellar array anyway? We might never get another chance to eliminate them completely. Rachel considered it. The weaponized star system could reach the retreating Reapers if they acted quickly. One command would end the threat forever, but it would also prove the enemy's point about human ruthlessness. "Stand down," she ordered. "Let them go." "Ma'am, they could come back." "Yes, they could. But if we attack them while they're retreating, we prove that they're right about us. Maybe it's time to remember that we chose to become peacekeepers for a reason." The aftermath of the war was more complex than anyone had expected. The Reapers kept their word and withdrew beyond the galactic rim, but their parting message had been heard by every species in the galaxy. Humanity had saved everyone, but the cost had been their reputation as benevolent protectors. The Council is requesting a complete review of human military capabilities, Ambassador Tom Bradley reported during a classified briefing. "They want to know exactly what other weapons we have in storage." Admiral Kate Stevens shook her head. "That's not going to happen. Some secrets are better kept secret." "They're scared of us now, Kate. More scared than they ever were of the Reapers." "Good," Kate replied bluntly. "Fear breeds respect, and respect prevents wars. The galaxy has been peaceful for 8 centuries because other species knew that humanity could be dangerous if provoked. Now they know exactly how dangerous." Dr. Alex Morgan had spent the weeks after the war analyzing Reaper technology and human tactical innovations. His conclusion was disturbing. We didn't just defeat them through superior firepower, we out-evolved them. They were designed to adapt and learn, but we adapted faster. We became more ruthless, more creative, more willing to do anything necessary to win. "Is that a bad thing?" asked Paul Kim. "I'm not sure. The Reapers were right about one thing. We have capabilities that could threaten entire galaxies if we ever chose to use them aggressively. The question is whether we can trust ourselves to remain protectors instead of conquerors." The answer came in an unexpected way. 3 months after the war ended, humanity voluntarily sealed away most of the weapons they had developed, including the stellar conversion technology and the probability weapons. The alien species watching this decision were surprised by the voluntary restraint. "Why are you giving up your most powerful weapons?" asked Ambassador Quilon during a council session. Tom Bradley stood before the assembled representatives, his words carrying the weight of human history. "Because we remember what we used to be, before we learned to control ourselves. The galaxy needed protectors, not conquerors. So we chose to become protectors. The war forced us to remember our darker nature, but it doesn't mean we have to embrace it. But privately, in secure military facilities throughout human space, the really dangerous weapons remained unsealed and ready. Humanity had learned an important lesson during the Reaper War. Sometimes the best way to keep the peace was to make sure everyone knew you were capable of terrible things if pushed too far. Years later, when alien children played war games, they would sometimes suggest playing like humans. The other children would immediately protest, because everyone knew that when humans got really unpleasant, even machines designed for extermination would choose to run away rather than face what humanity was willing to become. The galaxy remained peaceful, protected by beings who understood darkness well enough to wield it when necessary, and wise enough to put it away when the crisis passed. But now everyone knew that beneath civilization's surface lurked something that could make even genocidal machines reconsider their life choices. In the end, the greatest protection against future threats wasn't humanity's weapons or their willingness to use them. It was the knowledge that somewhere in human space, people were quietly preparing for the next time someone decided to unleash hell on the galaxy. And when that time came, they would be ready to respond with something even more unpleasant.